It was one of those perfect Portland Saturdays in early fall, the kind that makes you forget the 9 months of gray drizzle that are practically guaranteed. The air was crisp, smelling of damp leaves and distant wood smoke, and the sun cast long, golden shadows across our small backyard. I was on the patio, nursing a lukewarm coffee, watching my 12-year-old son, Noah, meticulously line up a soccer ball. He was all lanky limbs and boundless energy, his face a perfect, infuriating mashup of my features and those of his late father, James. "Mom, watch this one," he called out, his voice cracking with the first hints of adolescence. I'm going to curve it right around the gnome. Beckham style. I raised my camera, an old but reliable Canon that felt like an extension of my own arm. I'm watching Beckham. Just try not to decapitate Gary the gnome again. He's been through enough. Noah grinned. A flash of braces and pure, unadulterated joy. He backed up, took a running start, and with a surprisingly graceful kick, sent the ball spinning in a perfect arc. It swerved neatly around the ceramic gnome, a kitschy garden ornament James had bought as a joke years ago, and nestled into the back of the small goalpost we'd set up. "Goal!" he yelled, throwing his arms up in triumph. I clicked the shutter, capturing the moment in his face tilted towards the sun, mouth open in a triumphant shout, the blur of the soccer ball in the corner of the frame. It was a perfect shot, a perfect morning. These were the moments I lived for, the tiny pockets of peace and happiness that stitched our life together. It had been just the two of us for 6 years, ever since James, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, had been lost during a brutal storm mission off the Oregon coast. The grief had been a tidal wave that threatened to pull me under, but Noah had been my lifeboat. Every decision, every sacrifice was for him. We were a team. My life was a carefully constructed balancing act. I worked 2 jobs, a part-time administrative assistant at Noah's middle school, which offered decent benefits and allowed me to keep an eye on him, and a freelance photography business that was more passion than profit. I shot family portraits, small weddings, local events, anything to build my portfolio and bring in a little extra cash. It was a constant juggle of schedules and bills, a life painted in shades of just enough, but it was ours. It was real. "Okay, superstar," I said, lowering the camera. "Time to wrap it up. You've got that bike ride with Liam, remember?" He groaned dramatically. "Do I have to?" "I'm in the zone." "Yes, you have to. You promised him. And I need to edit these photos for the Henderson wedding." I pointed a finger at him. "Helmet. And stick to the bike path on Greenway. No shortcuts through the street." I know," he said, grabbing his helmet from the back porch. He jogged over and gave me a quick, sweaty hug. "Love you, Mom. Love you more," I said, ruffling his hair. "Be safe." He wheeled his bike out of the garage, gave me one last wave, and pedaled down the street, his bright red helmet a receding dot of color against the autumn leaves. I watched until he turned the corner, a familiar knot of parental anxiety tightening in my chest before I consciously forced it to loosen. He was a good kid. A responsible kid. He would be fine. I went back inside, the quiet of the house settling around me. I poured another cup of coffee and sat down at my computer, the joyful images of the Henderson wedding filling the screen. For a few hours, I lost myself in the work, adjusting light levels, cropping photos, and transforming fleeting moments into permanent memories. In was a quiet, peaceful bubble, the kind you don't appreciate until it's violently burst. And then the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, assuming it was a spam call about my car's extended warranty. But something made me pick up. A tiny, prickling sense of unease. Hello. Am I speaking with Kira Miller? The voice on the other end was female, calm, and professional. The kind of calm that signals an emergency. Yes, this is she. My heart started to beat a little faster. Mom, my name is Sarah. I'm a paramedic with Portland Fire and Rescue. There's been an accident involving your son, Noah Miller. The world tilted on its axis. The colors in the room seemed to fade, and all sound narrowed to the woman's voice in my ear. What? What kind of accident? Is he okay? He was struck by a vehicle on the Greenway bike path crossing. He is responsive but has sustained significant injuries. We are transporting him to Portland General Hospital. We need you to get there as soon as you can. I don't remember the rest of the call. I don't remember hanging up. My body moved on autopilot. I grabbed my keys, my purse, and my jacket, my mind a screaming void of panic. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic lights I ran, horns I didn't hear, and a single desperate prayer repeating over and over in my head, please be okay. Please, okay, please be okay. The emergency room was a controlled chaos of beeping machines, hushed conversations, and the sharp, sterile smell of antiseptic. A nurse with tired eyes and a kind face found my name on a list and led me to a small, private waiting room. A doctor will be with you shortly, she said, her voice gentle. The wait was the purest form of torture I have ever known. Every minute stretched into an eternity. I paced the small room, my phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. I tried to call my dad, Robert, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't unlock the screen. My mind raced, conjuring images of Noah, of the car, of 100 terrible possibilities. I thought about James, about how he had run toward danger to save others, only for danger to find our son on a quiet neighborhood bike path. Finally, a doctor in blue scrubs came in. She had a grim, wary expression that made my stomach plummet. Mrs. Miller, I'm Dr. Evans. She didn't ask me to sit down, which I knew was a bad sign. Noah has been stabilized, but his injuries are very serious. He has a severe traumatic brain injury. There's significant swelling, and we're working to manage the intracranial pressure. He also has a compound fracture of his left femur, multiple fractured ribs, and some internal bleeding. Each word was a physical blow. Traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding. The terms were clinical, detached, but they painted a picture of utter devastation. He's being prepped for surgery right now, she continued. It will be a long procedure, at least 6 hours. We need to relieve the pressure on his brain and repair the damage to his leg and internal organs. I need you to understand the next 48 hours are critical. We'll do everything we can. I think I nodded. I might have said, thank you. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. The doctor's pager went off, and with a sympathetic look, she was gone, leaving me alone with the wreckage of her words. My first coherent thought was to call my parents. My dad answered on the second ring. Kira? What's wrong? He asked, his voice instantly laced with concern. He could always tell. Tears I hadn't realized I was holding back began to stream down my face as I choked out the story. David's no, he was hit by a car. It's bad. It's really bad. We're on our way, he said, no hesitation. I'm leaving right now. We'll be there in an hour. We? I asked, a sliver of hope in my voice. Maybe just this once, my mother would put aside our differences. Maybe in a crisis this monumental, she would finally show up for me. There was a pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background. My dad came back on the line, his voice strained. Your mother, she has that big charity gala tonight. She's the keynote speaker. She says she can't possibly back out now. She sends her love. The words landed like a slap, of course. A charity event, an audience, an opportunity to be seen and admired. That was always more important than her family's messy, inconvenient reality. The sliver of hope in my chest curdled into a familiar, bitter resignation. "Okay, Dad," I said, my voice flat. "You come. Just you." As I sat there, waiting for my son to be wheeled into a life or death surgery, the long and complicated history with my mother, Linda, played out in my mind like a movie I'd seen too many times. She had never approved of my life. I was the artistic one, sensitive one, while my younger sister, Claire, was the pragmatic, successful one who had followed the path my mother laid out for her. Claire had married a wealthy lawyer, lived in a sprawling house in Seattle, and produced 2 grandchildren my mother doted on. I, on the other hand, had married a man mother deemed beneath me. James, with his steady government salary and his passion for saving lives, wasn't ambitious enough in her eyes. "A hero's salary doesn't pay for a summer home, Kira?" she'd once said, a casual, cutting remark that perfectly encapsulated her worldview. She'd tried to control every aspect of my life, my career choices. Photography is a hobby, not a profession. My parenting style, you're far too lenient with no. And especially my finances. After James died, her attempts to control me had intensified. She saw my grief as a weakness, an opportunity to swoop in and fix the life she'd always disapproved of. I'd spent 6 years politely, but firmly keeping her at arm's length, creating boundaries she constantly tried to bulldoze. My dad arrived, his face etched with worry. He wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming home. And for the first time since the phone call, I allowed myself to break down completely, sobbing into his shoulder. He didn't say much, just held me, a silent, solid presence in the storm. He bought me a coffee I didn't drink and a sandwich I didn't eat, and sat with me as the minutes on the clock ticked by with agonizing slowness. The 6 hours of surgery felt like a lifetime. When Dr. Evans finally emerged, she looked exhausted but cautiously optimistic. "The surgery went as well as we could have hoped," she said. "We were able to relieve the pressure on his brain and stop the bleeding. His leg is set. Now we wait. We've placed him in a medically induced coma to allow his brain time to heal. We'll know more when we try to wake him. But he's a strong kid. He's a fighter. They let me see him in the pediatric ICU. Nothing can prepare you for the sight of your child, so full of life and energy just hours before, lying still and pale in a hospital bed, hooked up to a terrifying array of machines that beeped and wared, breathing for him. His head was bandaged, his leg in a massive cast, his face swollen and bruised. He looked so small, so fragile. I pulled a chair to his bedside, took his limp hand in mine, and whispered, 'I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. You just have to fight.' And so began the vigil. The next 3 days were a blur of antiseptic smells, hushed conversations with nurses, and the constant rhythmic symphony of the machines keeping my son alive. I didn't leave the hospital. I slept in the uncomfortable chair by his bed, showered in the family restroom down the hall, and lived on vending machine coffee and the crackers my dad brought me. My dad was my rock, staying for hours, talking to me about anything and everything to keep my mind from spiraling into the dark abyss of what if. My mother didn't visit. She called once, a brief, perfunctory conversation. Robert tells me the surgery went well. "That's good news," she said, her tone as if she were discussing a minor inconvenience. "Let me know when there's any real change." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I needed anything. My sister, Claire, a single text message egg. "So sorry to hear about Noel." Mom's a wreck about her gala being overshadowed. TTL. I stared at the message, a fresh wave of rage and disbelief washing over me. Overshadowed. My son's life-threatening injury was an inconvenience to their social calendar. I didn't reply. I spent the hours talking to Noah, even though he couldn't hear me. I told him stories about his dad, about the day he was born, about his first soccer goal. I read him chapters from his favorite book. His hand remaining unresponsive in mine, the doctors were noncommittal. His vitals were stable, but the swelling in his brain was persistent. It was a waiting game, a brutal test of endurance. On the third day, as I was gently sponging Noah's forehead with a cool cloth, my phone rang. It was my mother. I almost ignored it, but a foolish, stubborn part of me thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she's finally calling to be a mother. "Kira, I'm glad I caught you," she began, her voice bright and businesslike. There was no preamble. No, "How is Noah?" Or, "How are you holding up?" "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice raspy from exhaustion and tears. "Listen, I'm calling about Claire's 30th birthday party this weekend. I know things are difficult right now, but this is a major milestone for your sister. The caterers are confirmed. The venue in Seattle is booked, and people are flying in. Claire would be absolutely devastated if you weren't there." I was so stunned I couldn't speak. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stole the air from my lungs. I could hear the steady beep of Noah's heart monitor, a stark contrast to the frivolous absurdity of her words. "Mom," I finally managed to say, my voice dangerously low. "Noah's in a coma. He's in the ICU. I am not leaving this hospital. Don't be so dramatic, Kira." She snapped, her tone shifting from cheerful to annoyed. "The doctors are doing their job. You sitting there staring at him isn't going to magically wake him up. It's one night. You can drive up to Seattle on Saturday afternoon, attend the party, and drive back Sunday morning. Your father can stay with Noah. It's important to show a united family front." A cold, hard anger began to solidify in my chest. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in years, a clarity that cut through the fog of grief and fear. A united family front. My son was almost killed, and you're talking about a party. I am not going. Her voice turned icy. You are being incredibly selfish. You always do this. You always make everything about you. This is for Claire." Then she delivered the final blow, the one she always saved for when she wanted to guarantee my compliance. That college fund I set up for Noah is discretionary. I control it. It would be a shame if, due to your lack of family loyalty, I decided that the funds could be better used elsewhere. Perhaps for Claire's children, whose mother actually appreciates me. And there it was, the ultimate manipulation. The financial gun to my son's future. For years, I had tiptoed around her, tolerated her insults, and swallowed my anger to protect that account. It was the one truly significant financial gift she'd ever offered, and she'd wielded it like a weapon ever since. She thought she had me. She thought, as always, that I would cave, but something inside me broke. Or maybe something was finally pieced together. Staring at my son's still form, at the tubes and wires keeping him alive, I realized with blinding certainty what my priority was. It wasn't a party. It wasn't my sister's feelings. It wasn't even a college fund. It was the little boy in that bed. He needed his mother, not a fractured, stressed, compromised version of his mother, but all of me. A strange calm washed over me. The fear was still there, but it was now overshadowed by a powerful, unshakable resolve. "Take the money," I said, my voice clear and steady. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "What did you say?" "You heard me." keep it. Give it to Claire's kids. Donate it to your precious charity so you can get your name on another plaque. I don't care. What I care about is lying in this bed right here. He is my only priority. I will not be emotionally blackmailed, and I will not be threatened. I am done. You can't be serious, she sputtered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. You would throw away your son's future over one party. No. I corrected her, feeling a strength I never knew I possessed. You would. You're the one willing to punish a 12-year-old boy in a coma to get your way. I'm just refusing to play your sick game anymore. We're done, Mom. Don't call me again. I'll call you when and only when I have news about my son. And for the first time in my 35 years, I hung up on my mother. The silence in the room was profound. I stood there, phone in hand, trembling not with fear, but with a wild, exhilarating sense of release. It was terrifying. I had just walked away from a significant financial safety net for my son, but I had also walked away from a lifetime of toxicity. I had chosen my son, and in doing so, I had chosen myself. I sat back down, took Noah's hand, and brought it to my cheek. It's still just you and me, kiddo, I whispered, a tear tracing a path down my face. But we're going to be okay, I promise you. A few hours later, as if in response, something happened. As I was adjusting his blanket, I saw it. A flicker. The faintest, almost imperceptible twitch of his eyelid. My breath hitched in my chest. I stared, hardly daring to believe it. And then it happened again, a tiny flutter of movement in the still landscape of his face. I scrambled to hit the call button for the nurse. The on-call neurosurgeon was paged immediately. He came in, performed a series of small tests, shining a light in Noah's eyes, checking his reflexes. His pupillary response is stronger, the doctor said, a small, professional smile on his face. And his intracranial pressure has been steadily decreasing for the past 12 hours. These are very positive signs, Mrs. Miller. Very positive. We might be able to start weaning him off the sedatives tomorrow. Hope, fierce and brilliant, exploded in my chest. It was the first truly good news we'd had since the accident. He was fighting. My son, my beautiful, strong son, was fighting his way back to me. My phone buzzed with texts from Claire and various aunts and cousins. Are you really not coming? Claire is so upset. Your mother is furious, Kira. You need to fix this. Family is everything. Don't throw it away over a silly disagreement. I deleted them all without replying. They were voices from a different world, a world that no longer concerned me. The next day was a tense, hopeful waiting game. The nurses slowly reduced the medication that was keeping him in the coma. I sat by his side, holding his hand, talking to him, encouraging him. Come on, Noah. Wake up, sleepyhead. Gary the gnome misses you. And then, late in the afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, his eyelids, which had been fluttering intermittently all day, slowly, groggily, opened. His eyes were unfocused, hazy, but they were open. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in their depths. Hey, baby, I whispered, tears of relief flooding my eyes. Hey, I'm right here. His lips moved, a dry, weak whisper. Mom. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Just as the wave of relief was washing over me, the door to the room swung open. My mother and Claire stood there, their faces like thunderclouds. They weren't dressed for a hospital visit. They were dressed in expensive, stylish clothes, looking utterly out of place amidst the medical equipment. Claire's eyes were red-rimmed, not from worry for her nephew, but from anger. I cannot believe you. My mother began, her voice a harsh whisper, completely ignoring the fact that Noah's eyes were open. You have completely and utterly ruined your sister's birthday. She spent the entire night in tears because of your selfishness. We had to cancel the brunch this morning because everyone was asking where you were. Claire chimed in, her voice thick with accusation. You made me look like a fool. I stood up slowly, a protective wall of ice forming around my heart. I looked at No, whose brow was furrowed in confusion, the beeping of his heart monitor picking up in speed. I turned back to them, my voice low and dangerously calm. Get out, I said. Excuse me. My mother gasped, accost. No, just woke up, I said, my gaze as sharp as steel. He has a severe brain injury. The last thing he needs is your screaming, your drama, and your monumental selfishness. So I'll say it again. Get. How dare you? Claire hissed. We drove all the way down here from Seattle to see him. No, I countered, taking a step toward them. You drove all the way down here to berate me. You haven't asked how he is. You haven't even looked at him. You just walked in here and made this about a party. I felt a lifetime of repressed anger surging to the surface, but I kept my voice even. I would not let them disrupt the peace my son so desperately needed. This is no longer up for discussion, I stated, feeling taller and stronger than I ever had in their presence. I am his mother. My only concern is his well-being. You are welcome to visit him, but there are new rules you will call first. You will not come here to cause stress. You will not mention your parties, your galas, or your bruised egos. You will come here to quietly support your grandson and nephew. If you cannot abide by those rules, you will not see him. Am I clear? They stared at me, their mouths agape, completely shocked. They had never seen this version of me before. The compliant, peacekeeping Kira was gone. In her place was a mother protecting her child. My mother, for once, was speechless. She looked from me to No, then back to me, her face a mask of cold fury. Without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed out. Claire gave me one last venomous glare before following her. The door clicked shut, leaving a blessed, peaceful silence in its wake. I took a deep, shuddering breath and turned back to Noah. He was looking at me, his eyes a little clearer now. Was that Grandma? He whispered. Yeah, baby, I said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. Don't you worry about it. Everything is okay. He closed his eyes, exhausted, and drifted back to sleep. But this time, it was a natural sleep, a healing sleep. The journey ahead was long, but we had taken the first step, and we would do it together. The year that followed was a marathon of healing. Noah's recovery was slow and arduous. There were weeks of inpatient care, followed by months of grueling physical and occupational therapy. He had to relearn how to walk, how to write, how to regain the fine motor skills he'd lost. There were moments of frustration, of tears, and of wanting to give up. But through it all, his spirit, that bright, determined spark I'd always loved, shone through. We celebrated every milestone. The first time he stood on his own, the first time he could kick a soccer ball, the first time he told one of his cheesy jokes that made me groan and laugh at the same time. True to my word, I had severed ties. My mother, after a few more furious voicemails, eventually went silent. She cut me out of her will, a fact I learned through a stereo letter from her lawyer. The inheritance was gone. The college fund was gone. It was a terrifying financial blow, but with it came an incredible sense of freedom. I was no longer beholden to her approval or her threats. I threw myself into my photography. I took any job I could get, pouring my energy into building a real business. I created a website, networked with local event planners, and slowly, word of mouth began to spread. My photos, filled with the raw emotion and deep appreciation for life that my ordeal had given me, resonated with people. I wasn't just taking pictures anymore. I was telling stories. My business grew from a side hustle into a sustainable career. For the first time, I was financially independent on my own terms, built by my own hands and my own talent. My dad remained my staunchest ally. He visited Noah constantly, helped me with bills when I was short, and never once said, "I told you so," about my mother. He simply provided the quiet, unconditional love that I had always craved from her. About a year after the accident, on another one of those perfect Portland Saturdays, Noah and I were back in our yard. He was a little thinner with a web of faint scars on his temple and a slight limp he was still working to overcome, but he was whole. He was alive. He was lining up a soccer ball, just as he had been that day. "Watch this one, Mom," he said, his voice now a steady baritone. "Gonna curve it right around Gary. Beckham style." I raised my camera, the same old Canon, and smiled. "I'm watching. Beckham. Show me what you've got." He kicked the ball, and it sailed in a perfect, beautiful arc right into the goal. He turned to me, his face lit up with that same triumphant, joyful grin. I clicked the shutter, capturing the moment. It wasn't a return to how things were. It was something new, something stronger. We had faced the worst and had come out the other side, not unscathed, but unbroken. By choosing my son, I had inadvertently broken the cycle of guilt and control that had defined my life. I had lost a family, but I had found my own. And in the quiet, authentic life we were building, surrounded by genuine love and support, I knew we were finally, truly home,